Hello, friends. Another episode of the Insecurity Project podcast. I'm here today with my good friend Nikhil Badkundri. We're talking all things sport and insecurity. It's a topic we haven't covered before, but a really exciting subject. Sport in itself is exciting. Amity, my daughter, asked me what I was doing this afternoon. I said I was going to watch a bit of sport. She says, "Oh, what sport?" I said, "Just anything I can get my hands on." I just got a KO subscription, and my thumb had only just recovered from the Olympics. Actually, I thought I was going to have surgery just constantly. But yeah, the KO, it's not doing good things for my thumbs. But look, yeah, we're talking about the impact of insecurity on sport and how peak performance athletes have to manage their mental game as well and their beliefs and what's going on inside. So we'll dive into that in a moment. But Nikhil, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I do appreciate sharing your entire platform with me. It certainly is a pleasure just to be on this, given the platform to just share my thoughts and talk about something that is so dear and so close to my heart.
Yeah,
so thank you.
Great. It'll be exciting. So let's start where I start with all my guests. Tell us a bit about you and how you got here. And I'm always fascinated by the beginning of the story and growing up, whether you had insecurity, and the impact your parents had on you as a young man. So tell us a bit about your backstory so that we can understand
Yeah, of course,
who you are and how you got here.
Yeah, of course. I'll start with your second question first. I guess starting from my childhood, I was always told that I had all the skills in sport. I was fantastic, I had all the talent, but my talent never really translated into something tangible, be it, on the field. And cricket was my sport of choice back then. And cricket's all in the mind, to an extent that I sort of went for selections under 19 and under 17. And, I was just the best looking batsman in the nets. But when it actually came to a practice game, there was just nothing. I was probably out in the second or the third ball, if I remember right. So sport had always been something, and the translation of that sport into something tangible when it comes to on the field performance, it was never something that I could deliver on day in, day out. I mean, sure, there were moments in there where I was playing to prove my family or playing to prove people wrong, and then that created fantastic performance, but there was just far in between in terms of creating that performance. So that's where the interest really peaked. So just taking you back to, I guess, why sports psychology and sort of what is peak performance mindset. I've been in Australia for about 11 or 12 years. I worked in corporate all my life. Over the past few years, the constant thoughts that were circling in my head were more along the lines of, what am I doing here? Is this the right thing to do? Am I actually contributing? I mean, I need the money, so I'll just keep on doing this. But my interest was never really working in corporate. And then, like how things sort of eventuate, went through a relationship ending. And that just, as I say, heartbreaking is heart opening. As a result of that relationship ending, there was just so much in me, and there was just so much surrender to all of those thoughts that were in me. Am I doing this right? Am I leading my life the way I want to? That gave me access to, no, you're not. And, all of that needs to change. And the perennial question that I asked is, okay, cool. So what is it that I really want to do about these things? And that's where I still starkly remember me sending you an email that night, and then you and I having that 25 minute text conversation that just really gave me access to what I really wanted. And what I really wanted to do was to transition from corporate into helping people or sports professionals that really access that peak performance state that exists within them. That's a very long-winded answer to a couple of questions that you asked, but the key points in there being being a sports professional or an athlete myself in the past, I know how hard it is to consistently show up day in, day out, and ensure that your performance is at the potential that you think that you are at. And then that doesn't happen, there are cascading effects, not just on the day and the sport that you play, but also everything that happens around you in your life.
Yeah, sure. So going back a little further, your interest in sport. So, cricket in India is a big deal. I imagine if you don't grow up enjoying cricket, then perhaps that's probably more difficult. It's probably the norm for people to want to play cricket and play cricket well. Is that cultural expectation that you'll play cricket and you'll play it to a high standard?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a bit of a rat race as well. It's like, I am, if I come with my bat and ball, I am going to be fantastic at the sport. And, I always had my bat and ball with me and used to gather the kids around and play in the street. And I would sort of try and tonk every ball that used to ball me. Used to pull those balls at me, just trying to tonk them everywhere. I've broken a few glass windows in my time playing in the streets. But absolutely, that cultural expectation or the rat race that I spoke about earlier was always, because there are so many people around you in a place like India. I mean, we're talking about 1.2 or 1.3 billion people. To make a mark, it was always you had to be the best. And number two was just never really an option. So there was just that expectation of, if I have picked up something that I'm slightly good at it, there was an innate expectation that I had from within, wherein I just had to be the best at it. And second best or third best is was just never really an option.
Yeah, well, I spent a couple of weeks in Nagpur in India a few years back, and the little kind of slum area where I was staying, there was a bunch of kids playing cricket, and I'd just gone for a run. And I came back and thought, can I play, guys? Do you mind if I join in? And they were excited for me to join in. And so I'm charging in off the long run, and I just kept getting hit back over my head, like these kids, 10, 11, 12, just. And then it came my time to bat. I thought, right, now my turn. They're bowling dooceras and wrong-uns and googlies and like, who knows what's happening. I just got no chance. They all thought it was great fun, but just the standard of these kids, with limited resources, who knows what kind of bat and ball we're even playing with. But yeah, then the game ended when I broke a glass window and just the crowd scattered. So, yeah.
It's amazing when that happens. It's like, well, you're the only person left, and then you're like, oh, no one told me that we're actually supposed to run.
That's right, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so growing up with that culture, you're kind of good at it naturally, but the expectation is you're going to be elite. There must be a fair bit of pressure.
Yeah.
Then how did you manage that pressure as a young man growing up?
Oh, I didn't. I gave up. I gave up when it was quite evident to me that, and my family as well, it was quite evident that I was not going to make a mark in sport. So the way of handling pressure was to turn a blind eye towards it, to actually not be in a state of, everything that I know today, which is state of responsibility and the law. It was just giving up the sport. It was concentrating on studying. And that was pretty much it. That was the end of my, sporting endeavor from back home in India.
Wow.
But dealing with pressure is an interesting one, though, isn't it? I wish that I knew everything that I know today, so that if I had to go and speak to that, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old Nikhil and really tell him what does dealing with pressure really mean, I would just do it so differently. And it really is that space of holding space for kids when they grow up. I'm not a parent, and I can only speak from what I have seen and what I have learned and what I've experienced over time. It is kids are that between that age group of, let's say, when they start sort of understanding things around them, which would be roughly at about 4 or 5. all the way up until 12, 13, 14, kids just want to enjoy. They just want to be, hitting the ball, be it cricket. They have this innate sense of just having or wanting fun. It is when adults start speaking to us, when we are kids, and adults go along the lines of, well, don't do this, don't do that. That is when we start developing, if I actually end up doing this, then this would happen. And just coming back to my own story, for me, that if then else conversation just became part of my norm, which was, because I'm not good at cricket, I am not going to play it again, as opposed to, I want to play cricket because I just love and enjoy playing it. And there was this perceived notion of, if I am not going to be really fantastic at cricket, there is no point in investing time, energy, and effort doing it. Therefore, invest my time somewhere else, which was into studying. So it was amazing, like something that was happening in the present, in the now, but there was this massive meaning that was placed on it in the future, that I am not going to be anything in cricket. Therefore, I have to give that up and just be something that I wasn't. I've never been academic, so I wasn't fantastic at it either. Yeah. So yeah, the pressure was just huge. Yeah, it was fantastic, and that sort of also led me to, over time, just because it wasn't dealt for quite some time, the victim mentality, the why me, sort of just started to pop up in not just a sporting sense, but in other areas of my life as well. Sorry, I did cut you short earlier.
Well, no, I was just going to say, so then, you left India and left your family, a very, very courageous thing, and moved to Australia, moved to Melbourne, didn't know anyone, no contacts, and just kind of starting again. So that must have been another immense amount of pressure, the pressure of being on your own, and the pressure of having to find your own resourcefulness. No doubt that was some formative years in your life as well. You must have learned a lot about yourself in handling that kind of pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fantastic. It was almost a clean slate for me. A lot of people ask me what is that I offer when I say peak performance. And, my answer sort of varies. I actually don't really know what I can offer you till I really start having that conversation. I mean, I can say, yes, I can offer you freedom, I can offer you awareness, action, I can offer you peak performance state, zone, blah, blah, blah. To relate that to your question, when I hit the Australian shows way back in 2010, starting with a clean slate just gave me complete freedom to just rewrite the story, just be who I wanted to be, just lead my life the way I wanted to. And there was no, even though there were these mindset barriers that I had coming from a place like India, and I absolutely love the place. I go there almost every year and a half, and it's a special place. But to come to a place like Australia, where the mindset and thought process is just completely different, and that liberation was absolutely huge. And that just gave me a very different perspective on how people look at life, therefore how people lead life, and therefore how pressure is just something that is internal. It's not something that is outside of you, how the perception of, and it gave me a massive gift of perception, which was whatever was happening outside of me is just really more of a internal reaction that I'm having to something that is happening outside of me. Funny example, when I guess you and I were in Canberra a few months back, and we decided to go for that run, at about 6 a.m. in the morning, when you were just wearing the long sleeves top, and I had 3 or 4 tops and then a jacket on top. And I was asking you, do you actually not feel cold? And you're like, nah, I mean, this is about 3 or 4 degrees, therefore I'm wearing a long sleeve, so about 6 or 7 degrees, probably be singlet running weather. And, just the point there being the gift of perception and the perspective is just massive. Like, even though it is cold, and it is a fact that it is 4 degrees, but how much of that cold I feel is totally in me. And my experience of that is very different to your experience, and the relation of all of that is, for our athletes and sports professionals, it never really is the thing or the situation. It is what they are making to mean about the thing or the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk more about sport, and let's talk about what it is that separates peak performers from those who have the skill, are told that they've got everything that it takes to make it, but never do. What's your observation around some of the real mindset shifts that the elite of the elite have that, you think is really essential for peak performance?
They just work with me.
Great.
No, I'm joking. Two things. For me, it is being fully committed and totally unattached.
Fully committed and totally unattached.
Yeah, so fully committed to the process and totally unattached to the outcome. And this two part, which is a 2A and a 2B, is awareness and responsibility. So when I say fully committed, so let's talk about the first one. When I say fully committed and totally unattached, is you're totally committed to the process of getting to an outcome, but you're not attached to the outcome. What I simply mean by that is, as humans, we come from a place of living in the past or thinking about the future. Therefore, what skips us is the presence or the present moment, or us being present in that moment. When we think about something that has happened in the past and try to associate something that has happened in the future, and there is a quote by someone, and I forget the name, is past hurt informs future failure. And that is so true. If I am facing a bowler that I have gotten out to a couple of times in the past, and I face him again and again the next time, all I'm thinking about is how not to get out. And what that is leading is, what happens as a result of that is my presence in the current moment of what is just happening is just not there. And as a result of, like, if we try and switch to the scientific aspect of it, which essentially is when I am constantly in that state of fight or flight, as I call it, which is past or future, and I'm drawing from a nervous system, which is a sympathetic nervous system, and that sympathetic nervous system does not have the actual resources to just ground me or to just keep me present in the current moment. Which is where my work of, or the statement that I made, is fully committed, totally unattached, sort of comes in. To talk about the second one, awareness and responsibility.
Well, just unattached, just highlight that. So, that seems a bit of a contradiction, to be unattached. So I'm sure that's easier said than done, to be unattached to the outcome, because you want to win. You're playing the game to win. So to be unattached to winning seems like a difficult thing to do. So can you tell us a bit more about how that's possible?
Yeah, of course. Unattached, attachment. Well, let's talk about attachment, and then I'll get to unattached. Attachment basically implies, if we open up any psychology books, it implies care and concern. A lot of the time, most of the athletes would be, I just wish I did not care as much about the outcome. My philosophy, or what I really go to the table when I work with athletes and sports professionals, is I want you to care. I absolutely want you to care, but I don't want you to be concerned. And that the fully committed part is the caring, and the totally unattached part is the concern. And if we just really break that down, the caring is, I really love the sport, therefore I am playing it, and I am going to show up as the best athlete that I can on the day in that moment. The concern is, if I get out on a duck whilst playing cricket, or if I am not scoring the number of free throws while playing basketball, that's going to be okay. Like, the concern of me not being good enough, the concern of what the tabloids would publish about me, the concern of what my teammates would think about me. That is the part that we are separating. When we come from a place of concern, that is when we start thinking about, when we come from a place of care is when we start thinking about things from heart. And concern is when we start thinking about things from the head. And the way our brain works, which is, conscious, subconscious brain, concern is mostly driven out of subconscious, which sort of is our stories of lack and limit, which again, just translating back to my example, it was always a concern of if I don't play a good looking cricket shot, even though it gets 4 runs or 10 runs, my teammates are going to be like, oh yeah, that was just a shit shot, or that was just more of a hack, and you somehow actually got that. And then the concern, or what I really wanted in that instance from my teammates, was just pure validation. And that is how I separate that. Again, a very long-winded answer, but
no, it's good, because that's really where the insecurity piece comes into. The concern is often the concern around what others think, the concern around need to be seen to achieve a certain outcome so that you can feel good about yourself, so that you can feel loved, celebrated, accepted. So I think to really master that, I care, but I let go of concern, it does require a very secure individual that they've already owned their value and worth and haven't attached it to that performance. Because you see, sorry to cut you off. I was just thinking about athletes retiring, where they have found they've been able to perform at a very high level, but they're very attached to that performance. And the moment they can't perform at that level anymore, they crumble as a human being. They do not know how to get out of bed in the morning. They do not know how to function, and significant suffering. So it's a big deal. I like that distinction: care but not concern. Really important.
Yeah, 100%. And, there are plenty of stories. I only have to go as far as Diego Maradona, to what really happened to him once he stopped playing sport. Just never could get out of the actual funk. And, there are plenty of stories that you would find on the internet as to how exactly he just completely ruined his life. Or just take George Best, for example, at the tender age of 49, when he was the charm within the English football at about 35, 36, about 13 or 14 years, he had passed away. And the point over there being that there is an identity that has been associated with that performance. And the moment the performance is not up to the standard, the identity takes a hit. And once that mismatch happens, it's great when you're at your peak, but once that mismatch happens, the performance still remains the same, because that's what people quote unquote expect. And the identity just keeps on taking a back seat. And that is where, if you aren't a secure sportsman, or if you aren't a secure human being from within, that just crumbles everything. And then you'd see a lot of people, burnout, substance abuse, drinking issues, health issues, chronic illnesses. All of these are manifestations of that identity being attached to that performance, and the identity away from that performance, away from the sport, not really being taken into consideration, which is, my heart goes out to individuals, and athletes going through that state, but it unfortunately is the reality. And that's why I just love doing this work
Yeah, sure. We'll get to responsibility and awareness in a moment. You get your second point. Just wanted to ask you about Ash Barty and Naomi Osaka. The moment I saw Naomi's press conference after the exit to the US Open. Shout out to Naomi if you're listening. But yeah, just not coping at the moment, really not coping. And she said, I don't even know when I'm going to play tennis again. I'm really not coping that well. And so clearly one of the most purely talented athletes of our generation, but not coping mentally at the moment, as opposed to Ash Barty, who I don't know. I don't know if she's as purely talented as a Naomi Osaka. Doesn't look. I mean, she's multi-talented. She's played basketball and cricket at very high levels. Has she played basketball?
Maybe she definitely played cricket, and she scored a century for Queensland. So yeah, I certainly know that.
Maybe golf. I think I was getting confused with who's the tennis Dylan Alcott. I read yesterday that he won an Olympic medal, gold medal, playing for the wheelchair Australian basketball team.
Yeah, he's a legend. I love him.
Yes. So anyway, back to my question. So Ash Barty and Naomi Osaka, can you tell us a bit about what you think's going on for both those two fine women at the moment?
Ash Barty, certainly Ben Crow's going on. Ben Crow is Ash Barty works with Ben Crow, and I'm hoping that I'm hoping that is Ben Crow. He works with Ash Barty on the mindset and performance side of things. First of all, before I get to answering that question, I think after winning Wimbledon, for Ash Barty to come out and say that she's actually working with someone takes a lot of courage. And hats off to her. Same with Naomi Osaka pulling out of the French Open, and then again speaking about the actual struggles that she's going through requires a lot of strength, requires a lot of awareness, and just is so courageous. So hats off to both of them, first of all. Back to your question. I think Ash Barty, that is what is going on for her. Like, she actually works on that aspect of the game day in, day out. And then when we try and think about Naomi Osaka, and I'm going to slightly dive into cultures, because not that I'm qualified to speak about cultures, but the culture that comes with sport is there is a winning culture. And that is the winning mentality that has been ingrained, or I'd like to assume that every champion has that winning mentality ingrained. What that results in is the winning mentality, when that is ingrained in us at that level. Sometimes athletes don't know what happens when they lose and what are these emotions that actually come up when they lose. And there are a whole bunch of emotions. It is, the fear of failure. It is the angst. It is the frustration. It is how could I lose to a qualifier? It is all of those things. How I could help Naomi Osaka? There are a lot of things. I think the biggest part in there to identify is just hold space for her. It is okay to lose. You're not the first Grand Slam champion that hasn't been able to defend her title. That is absolutely okay. Once you get to that space of acceptance, which sort of, it is a precursor to the point that we were talking about earlier, which is awareness and responsibility. It is knowing that losing is okay. It is knowing that being in that spot of, yes, I have lost, and cool, and that's fine. Once we get to that state of acceptance, that is when we are aware of what that is doing to us. So I'm not going to make things up, because I've got, I don't know Naomi on a personal level, but what I could assert is what she's going through is more of, am I a champion? Am I qualified to actually play at this level? And these are just some of the things, or some of the narratives that champions have, and in my experience have come through. As a result of her going through that, the moment she's aware of those narratives, she will know how to take responsibility for it. Now, to give you an example, let's say that Naomi is thinking, I am a shit champion, I am frustrated as a result of this. I think the real work in there is distancing herself from what she is feeling, and then sort of coming back to the topic of care and concern, distancing herself from the feeling, and then reframing that narrative to what I'm experiencing is angst, frustration, ... as a result of losing to ... The moment we create that space of experience, or even just using that word that I am experiencing ... it gives you the opportunity, or it gives the athlete the opportunity to actually question that, yes, am I really thinking that I am not a champion? Am I really thinking that I am not good enough to play at this level? And I think that is the key, wherein the awareness sort of comes in, and then you just take responsibility for it. And then once you take responsibility, it really is an easy road from there. And I say easy because, I know the story always ends. I know the story always ends at a fantastic, on a fantastic note.
Mm. Yeah, that's really cool. That makes a lot of sense. No, I like that. And it's such a fascinating area to examine. I love watching and imagining the psychology going behind the scenes for athletes that separate them in crucial moments. I can vividly remember the World Cup final, Australia v New Zealand. I don't know if you remember watching that in Melbourne. Australia and New Zealand had shared the tournament. And so the Kiwis at home were just unbeatable. Brendan McCullum was hitting balls everywhere. They were demolishing opponents. And Australia were playing really well as well. And eventually the two teams met in the final at the MCG. And it was the first time the Kiwis had played at that ground in some time. It's a lot bigger than their grounds. The crowd was bigger. They just, it was so interesting listening to the two captains before the game. Clark was captaining Australia. They just come from a huddle where Andy Lee, the comedian, was telling jokes. They were so relaxed. Clark said in the interview, he says, we've only really been worried about this game the whole tournament. This is the only game we've been thinking about. Everything's just been preparing for this game. Yeah, we're ready. We've been ready for this game from the start. Yeah, we're ready. It's what he said. Brendan McCullum, his interview was like, we're not worried. We're not overawed. We're not afraid. We're not intimidated. Which for anyone who studies any kind of psychology means he is all of those things.
Yeah.
And so although their skill level and their performance was world class, their performance on that day was a disaster. From the first over, when Stark came out and got Brendan McCullum bowled cheaply, it was all over. And such a very clear picture of how much mindset matters when it comes to peak performance. Absolutely. And just sort of finishing the loop on Naomi Osaka, I am in no way saying that everything that I've said is true for her, and there might be, 30, 40 other things, and there might be a lot that might be going on in her personal life as well. So 100%, she is as I said, she's just a bit of a legend to just come out and speak. And just that awareness, it is huge, and that goes a long way. Coming back to Australia, New Zealand, I am a cricket nuffer, a bit of a cricket tragic, dare I say. Just hearing you speak about Clark and Brendan McCullum, and as both of them as captains, and if we again apply that psychology lens to it, Michael Clark was very sure on what he wanted, whereas Brendan McCullum was coming out of a place of what he did not want. Exactly.
And it is so fascinating because when we come out of a place of what we don't want, that is when we constantly try to, tackle the problem or tackle what's going on at that circumstantial level. Whereas when we come from a place of what we want, it is that inner self of self-belief that I am going to achieve it. Again, what we don't want sort of comes from managing circumstance, and what we want comes from that root of just self-belief, trust, process, and the outcome would happen. So yes, and I was actually at the G when not just for the 2015 World Cup, but also in 2019 when the women's team lifted the World Cup. It was just spectacular. The feeling of just being around 90,000 people and that euphoria and that atmosphere was fantastic. And this is why I absolutely love sport, because the energy and the everything else that happens with it, you just latch on to it and you just want to be involved. You just want to dance around and party and all of those things.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I want to ask you about amateur sport as well, because not everyone's going to be able to represent their country or be the best of the best, but lots of people are serious about sport. There are lots of people who really want to be good and want to perform at their best. So be fascinated by your insights for amateur sport. I know because mindset matters just as much at that level as it does at the elite level. I played 3 seasons for the Golden Swans AFL team, and
nice.
I was not tough enough to play football. I was a fairy. I'd never put my head over the ball, always afraid of getting hurt.
Certainly makes the two of us.
I was so excited for my first game, and literally 20 seconds into the first game, I was flat on my back being winded by some big guy from Yass. I just wanted my mum to come and look after me. But I just remember, there was one game, for whatever reason, I just ran an experiment around mindset, because I was always so afraid. I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to get hurt. So I just thought, I'm going to not think about not getting hurt this whole game. Or I'm going to experiment with it, just a distraction. I'm going to be an angry bastard on the football field, because plenty of my teammates, I had this one guy on my team who was a priest, a Catholic priest, lovely, mild-mannered priest, off the field, get him on the field, and he was pulling World Championship wrestling maneuvers in back play. He was always in some melee and some dirty play. He was always a horrible person on the field. And so I thought, I'm going to try and be really rude, and I'm not going to shake my opponent's hand. I'm not going to make friends with my opponent, which was my entire strategy before that. If I make friends with my opponent, he won't hurt me. I was like, not even going to talk to him. I'm going to niggle him. I'm going to be annoying. And it was extraordinary. I played my best game by a long way. I never went back to that, because then it kind of clashed with a bunch of other values. I didn't really like being that guy, but it certainly made a massive difference to my performance. So what can you tell the amateur sports people listening around how they can access more magic and be in a high performance state, even when it's playing 3rd grade AFL on a rainy, windswept field with not a lot of skill?
Fantastic. The story that you shared is just brilliant. And that is the trials and tribulations of I guess, a professional or an amateur sports person trying to play great sport. What I would have said in your situation was you had let go of the fear of being hurt. And when we try and, again, just apply some concepts of psychology to it, our subconscious mind is trained in a way that can keep us safe or within the boundaries or the parameters of what we know. And what I would say, and you can tell me if this is true for you, is you just wanted to be safe, not break a leg, not break an arm, not do something to your neck. However, the moment you challenged that boundary and you were sort of able to, I guess, lift your eyes and look beyond that boundary of that subconscious mind that had set up those rules, which is safety. And I think you speak about that as a COVID safety officer, et cetera, as well. Once you had let that boundary go, it had given you access to a Jamin that was always there in you. However, there was something that was holding you back from getting to that stage. Just applying that to an amateur sports person, it's exactly the same. There might be so many things that are happening in their life currently, be it they've got a 1-year-old, they've had a sleepless night, they've had a fight with their partner, they are not doing great at work, and there can be a million reasons like that. It is about how do you not take any of those reasons that are holding you back into the sport that you play. And what I say is life always throws up circumstances to I guess, shed light on where you're not free. And what that simply means is you are resisting something that is happening for you right now. Therefore, you're not experiencing freedom. Therefore, your performance is directly reflected onto the sport, into the sport that you play. And then the simple answer is, how do you navigate that? I mean, there are plenty of things. I mean, I can sit here and tell you, well, breathing helps, relaxation helps, blah, 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 visualization, goal setting, all of those help. Yes, they do, but they do not help if you don't believe in self. And believe in self only happens when you start taking responsibility for where you are at. So 2 questions. For an amateur sports person who is playing any sort of sport, just simply, why are you playing the sport? And what do you hope to get at the end of it? Again, a very long-winded way, but I love to speak in analogies and metaphors. So I would leave the amateur sports person with those 2 questions. Why do you play the sport?
What does that open up for them when they start thinking about why they're playing? What do they hope to achieve? What happens next for them?
It really is. I mean, if we try and take it back to the basis of why we do anything, it is to feel good from within. And, you know, that is the fundamental nature of how humans are structured and how the inner wiring is. How often it happens that when you walk down the street and you see a dog wagging its tail, or you sort of see a kid just ambling around in the park, and it gives you that sense of happiness from within, because that you're like, oh, this kid or this dog or this animal is just so happy, and they've got everything down back. Why? How do I get more of that? It's because throughout that journey, it is throughout the journey of us being adults that we have set up these barriers that stops us from being free. And that's it. That's the answer.
I love it. And I love that it can be applied to people who are, you know, training for Olympics, or people who are hoping to get their club their first premiership. And it matters just as much. People find great meaning. One of the things I loved most about playing local sport was the meaning that lots of people, spectators even, or ex-players even, gain from the performance of that team on a Saturday afternoon. And so if everyone's doing well and accessing their best, then it's great for the whole community. So
yeah, absolutely.
It's a very interesting subject, and you've shared some really wonderful tools. Is there anything else? Is there anything we've missed that you'd like to wrap up by adding to the audience around insecurity in sport and the peak performance mindset?
No, I think we've covered a lot. And, you know, I could speak about the topic for another 3-4 hours, or probably even 3-4 days, given an opportunity. That is how much I absolutely love doing what I do. If there is something that the listeners can take away from this, is just know that this state that we speak about, the peak performance state or the performance mindset, merely in simple terms is called the zone. And that state is always within you. That state is not something that is outside of you or external to you. And you can tap into that state at any point in time. It is not this magical, mythical state that people perceive it to be. It is quite simply just something that you can tap into on demand. There are certain things that go into, or certain rituals that go into getting to that state, but it is quite simply just something that is within. And something that I'd love to leave people on is, again, a quote that is coming to mind is, for us to consistently be at our best self when it matters the most is about acceptance. And the quote that is coming to mind is, what has happened, and it couldn't have happened in any different way because it did not. And when you just lean into that, or when anyone just leans into that, it is just accepting that it has happened. Not saying that it was the right thing, not saying it was the wrong thing, not saying that is how you wanted it to happen, but it has happened nonetheless. And when you get to that state of acceptance, that is when, as you'd say, the magic just opens up, and you can just be whoever you want to be.
Yeah, beautiful. Because it's in that acceptance that you free yourself from the concern of needing it to be another way or look another way so that you could get more acceptance or approval. So that's the freedom. And I love what you said around being your best where it matters most. For some people, where it matters most is on the sporting field. And so if it matters most to them, then that's an important conversation, and these tools will greatly help. So thanks so much, Nikhil, for your time. Thanks for your wisdom. It's a really enjoyable conversation, and I'm sure the listeners will find great value.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much for having me. I do appreciate the time that we've spent. Thank you.
Great. We'll leave it there.